Hello and welcome to a new car review video on the channel, and welcome to Lotus at Hethel, Lotus's HQ in Norfolk. We've come here today in the Lotus Elan M100, so it's great to bring that back to its home where it was built. But we're here to review the new Lotus Eletre S. This is Lotus's first SUV and it's all electric. So let's get it on the road and see what it's like. So I'm quite excited about this one because obviously I'm a Lotus owner and I'm a big Lotus fan, and this is Lotus's first electric SUV. Okay, we have already had the Lotus Evija, but that's for the Jensen Buttons of this world, not mere mortals like me. So the prices for the Eletre range start from about 89 to 90,000 to 121,000, and you've got the standard Eletre, you've got the Eletre S, which is this model, and the Eletre R. So this is the £104,000 Eletre S. So let's talk about the design from the outside first of all. So carved by air is Lotus's philosophy for the exterior design, which talks about the porosity of the vehicle, that air can actually flow through it. And there's been a lot of mention of that, particularly at the rear where you can see into the rear wheel arches from the back, where you've got sort of ducts that work their way through the body. It must be really hard for designers to actually take the styling cues of a sports car range and a sports car manufacturer and transfer them onto a quite large SUV. I do think Lotus has achieved it pretty well. I think when you look at the Evija and you look at the Emira, there's a lot of those styling cues that have been interpreted nicely onto this particular design. It's got quite a presence at the front, it's got a very noticeable signature front end, and there's a couple of the vents and scoops which are recognisable from the Emira and the Evija. I think it manages its bulk down the side really well. It sort of spreads out into a rear haunch quite well, so there's a lot of kinetic kind of power to the back end. It's got the porosity thing as well that Lotus talk about, where air moves over the car and also through the car. I think that works really well and effectively. I think the fact that they've made it look quite shallow in terms of the depth along the side as well, with quite a large sill that's in carbon fibre on this particular version, it just takes away that visual bulk. The roofline really slopes away towards the rear, which again gives it that really sporty appearance. And when it's in its sort of lowest ride setting, it can, from some angles, almost just look like an estate car, which we all know fast estate cars are really cool. So I do like that about the appearance. So yeah, from my point of view, I think the designers work pretty well. I think they've interpreted the look or the styling cues of a Lotus pretty well, because it was a pretty hard job to get that right. I think a lot of car companies are going for the light bar across the back, but I really like how Lotus have applied it here. It works really well with the Lotus script, which we're familiar with for Lotuses for a long time, of having the script across the back. You've got the full width light bar. Also, it gives a lot of curvature to the back end into the air ducts. And also it's got several modes, so it's not just for the braking and the directional indicators, it's also gives you an indication of the charge, and it changes colour depending on the amount of charge and how quickly your car's charging. Also, in terms of the exterior, the fit and finish and the paint finish and the materials is first class. It's absolutely excellent. It doesn't feel like a low volume car manufacturer. It feels like a very high end, beautifully put together product, very solid with very good quality finishes externally. If we talk about the interior, well, just wow, it is really impressive in here. The fit and the finish and the tightness of the panel gaps and the quality of the stitching and everything is next level. Certainly it's next level even in terms of most other manufacturers or high-end manufacturer interiors that we think of with Porsche and Audi, but from where Lotus was, it's really impressive. I think Lotus has always been at the cutting edge in terms of graphical design, even under Danny Barr when they made the new Esprit and the new Elan concepts. The fact that their graphical interfaces that they created for those, their use of fonts and colours and graphical style has always been quite cutting edge. They've always been very good at that. And I think in terms of physical graphics, in terms of how the cabin is divided up in here, and also in terms of the instrument binnacles and the graphics that they're using on those, it's high quality, visually it's stunning. In terms of form, materials, it's stunning. It's a really impressive interior and it's a beautiful place to be. I do love the instrument bar in front here. It's got a minimal amount of graphical information. It's got speed, it's got the range, it's got the percentage of the battery, but it's not too intrusive. It doesn't take the eye away from the road too much. The central graphical display is impressive as well. We'll talk about that more in a moment. And we've also got passenger side narrow strip screen as well, where we can show music information and Spotify and Apple CarPlay information. So my kids would love that because they can play with the music and choose their tracks and that sort of thing. The tactility and the quality of the switchgear as well feels impressive. With this particular S model, we've got carbon fibre on the steering wheel and Alcantara. Some people don't like unusually shaped steering wheels, but I think this really gives it a sort of a race car type feel, so it ties in with the brand really well. Feels amazing quality, and you really know the direction that it's facing in just because of the shape of the steering wheel. So yeah, I really like that. I think it's quite a lovely touch point. This particular model has the camera wing mirrors, which I was quite sort of worried about initially because I've heard sort of mixed things about that sort of thing. But it has got a very broad field of vision. You can see quite a lot, and apparently I haven't driven it at night, but it gives you a better view at night than it would do with regular mirrors. Pretty impressive, and you get used to it pretty quick. We've got really high quality switches and indicator stalks, which I think are unique to Lotus. You've got real metal paddles as well, which are used for the different drive modes and also the regen. So the one on the right is for the working through the different drive modes, and on the one on the left is controlling the amount of regen. You haven't got one pedal driving with the Lotus like you haven't with Porsches as well, because I think they think it's not doesn't fit with the ethos of the brand as a sporting brand, and I think I agree with that. I like to still use the brakes, but I think it's good that you can control the amount of regen. I won't play the stereo because of copyright reasons, but we've got a fantastic KEF audio system in here, which is an English stereo system manufacturer. It's got 23 speakers and it sounds absolutely amazing. And not only that, they are a beautiful piece of theatre in terms of they look like they've been lightweighted in terms of the triangles on the perforated aluminium, but they've got a beautiful sort of gunmetal and gold mix of materials, and so they not only sound amazing, they look good as well. It's great to see that Lotus have given a nod to sustainability as well, because some of the materials are from reduce, reuse, recycle. So there's some offcuts used in the seating material, which is from the fashion industry. And some of the fabric materials are recycled as well. I was quite surprised how much space there is in the back as well. There's an awful lot of leg room in there, so they're really, it really is good for long journeys. Also, there's a little screen as well, so the kids can have access to some of the stereo functions and air conditioning and everything else, so that's going to go down well. The attention to detail is fantastic. On the back of the seats, there's a beautiful sort of metallic finished area where we've got the Lotus logo on it. It's just nice. They've really thought about it. There's a lot of attention to detail. Wow. It certainly picks up as well. Crikey. So let's talk about the drive. I'm impressed with that as well. I was talking to Alistair from the PR department I was interested in who actually worked on the development of this car, how some of the old Lotus engineers, were they still involved, and they absolutely were. And you can really feel that in the DNA of how it drives. I know a lot of other people have said, oh, it's a 2-ton SUV, how can it have Lotus DNA in how it drives and handles? And I think that's really unfair, to be honest. I think I've been really impressed with driving on these roads around Hethel, around the factory, and they're not perfect, typical British B roads, but it's soaking up the bumps really nicely, so it's really comfortable, but you can still feel the road in the way that I would expect from a Lotus. You can feel what the road's doing, and you can feel the road surface as well, which is surprising on such large wheels. The steering is surprisingly direct for an SUV, but again, that feels like a Lotus. I do think that helps give you that sporting feel, and it helps give you that Lotus feel. It's quite impressive how it manages its weight in the corners, and particularly how it manages the body roll. There isn't as much body roll as I would have expected. So let's have a look at what different drive modes we get if we use the paddle on the right hand side. We've got individual, we've got sport, we've got tour, we've got range, which obviously helps with the range, and we've got off-road, where it will actually move the vehicle up higher on the suspension, on the air suspension. Nice thing that it does in sport as well is you can actually feel the bolsters of the seats tighten around you, which I didn't expect. And you do feel a lot more locked in. You do feel the bumps a bit more, but not jarringly so. It just adds to that sporting feel, but doesn't really upset the car at all. And when you pitch it in, it's really good. We've got a 48 volt active anti-roll bar, which stiffens to obviously counteract the lean into corners. And yeah, I can say it's certainly doing that. I am really impressed with how little body roll we've got in this car on these B roads. And it's really impressive how it deploys that in the corner, but then it eases off once you get onto the straight and you go back to it being a nice, fairly supple ride, even in sport. To be honest, it's really surprising how there's very little hint of understeer or oversteer. I think you'd have to be really going for it and quite brave to actually make this either understeer or oversteer. It really holds its line really well for longer than you might expect it to. As I mentioned, the steering's surprisingly direct. It's got 2.5 turns lock to lock, but it does have a really nice sharpness to it, and it weights up nicely as you progress into a corner. One of the other things that I've found nice about the steering, and certainly the turning ability, was I had to do a couple of U-turns in the entrances to side roads, and I don't think this car is fitted with the four-wheel steer, but even then I was amazed how I could get it round in quite a small space. So I think if one of the things with this type of car, if you are worried about the size of it and you're worried about the manoeuvrability, as well as the overhead view that we've got on the infotainment, it's quite reassuring how easy it is to spin it round in quite confined spaces. And I really didn't expect that looking at the size of it from the outside. Some stats then, for those of you that like the stats. Top speed is 160 miles an hour. We're not going to be achieving that today, but because it feels so planted and it feels so sure-footed and also has a lack of roll, you can imagine doing that, and I don't think it would feel like there was a lot of drama. The battery is 112 kilowatt hours, with 109 kilowatt hours of that actually usable. The maximum power output is 603 brake horsepower. Maximum torque is 524 foot-pounds, which is about 710 newton meters. It's two-motor, open differential, all-wheel drive. And the 0 to 62 of this S is 4.5 seconds. The claimed range is 373 miles. We've been driving a while now and it's not gone down too much. It says I've still got 252 miles range and I'm at 82%. The energy efficiency is quoted as 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. The wheel sizes are 22-inch with Pirelli P0s. The optional 23-inch wheels are not recommended by the Lotus Dynamics specialists, but there are some low drag 20-inch as well if you really want to eke out that range. The luggage compartment is 611 litres. It's a nice big boot with a nice flat space, and also, like with most electric cars now, you've got an underboot, if you like, where you can store the cables or store some more things if you want to hide them away for security. The overall weight of the car is 2,520 kilograms, which is heavy for a Lotus, but it is managing it really well. I'd normally do my spec sheet now for this particular press car, but I haven't actually got one, so I don't know an awful lot about the specification of this particular car. I'm sure it does have some options, but every other Electra that I've seen, it's not as though there's a base model where it's just got plastic mouldings and no fancy materials. It seems as though just for the standard Electra, the quality of the materials is the same as it is here. So I do know you can choose the colours of the materials for the metal controls. And these have got sort of quite a light champagne gold on them, and carbon fibre and Alcantara. So it's got some beautiful materials on it. But yeah, there's no base model that just has raw plastic. They're all pretty good. And this does feel very sumptuous, sporty with the Alcantara and the carbon fibre, and really well put together. Porsche is one of the benchmarks for interiors, Porsche and Audi, but as I've said in several videos, I've always been so impressed with the quality and the materials in Porsche interiors. And I can safely say that I am really impressed with this. If this was a Porsche, there wouldn't be any problem. In some ways it's even better, the quality and the fit and feel and the quality of the materials. So I've driven the new Range Rover and I've driven the KN, and I think the Turbo GT model probably had the interior with all the carbon fibre and Alcantara that was as close to this, and it certainly is fine in that company, in the the top of the range KN Turbo GT, and also with the Range Rover. It does have that luxury feel to it. It is £100,000, but it does feel like a £100,000 car. It certainly doesn't feel like a poor relation at all. It could easily hold its own with those cars in terms of this amazing interior. And from a design point of view, just from the aesthetics, I'd say it's a step ahead, which is what I expect from Lotus. I've always expected that from Lotus. In the past, maybe the build quality wasn't there, or the fit and finish, but certainly the amount of effort that they put into the design being modern in terms of graphics and shapes and forms and things like that, they've always been good at that. So let's talk about the infotainment system, because we've got this lovely big screen here. It's Lotus's state-of-the-art hyper operating system. Lotus says it's designed to deliver an intuitive experience for all of the car's occupants. So like I say, I'm sure my kids would love the screen in the back. Visually, it's stunning. It runs on Unreal Engine, and you've got a lot of three-dimensional dynamic graphics going on. Pretty intuitive and pretty impressive. It's sharp and easy to view in all different lights, and also the screen rotates down into position when you get in the car, which is nice. And it's got the usual kind of Lotus branded startup graphics, which I like. You've got a head-up display, which is good and fairly common at this price point. But as I've mentioned, I really like the main instrument binnacle that we've got. We can see absolutely everything, the whole range of the information through the steering wheel. Some people complain about the shape of the steering wheel, but I think it's great, because you know where it is, and when it's straight ahead or when it's turned, because of the unusual shape of it. But not only that, I can see every graphic on the instrument binnacle. Not something that you could say with the 5 dials of a Porsche. You tend to not be able to see the 2 outer ones, particularly when you've got the GT steering wheel, but it's really easy to see the entirety of the instrument binnacle, and the graphics are sharp in all kinds of lights, and again, trendy, modern, lovely. The 15.1 touchscreen is OLED, as I've said. It's pretty intuitive, and it works. It's bright enough to work in all kinds of lighting situations, as I've said. One of the things that it doesn't have, I should say, was that Lotus were quite ahead of the game again in terms of having touchscreen technology in the car, or the latest kind of versions of that. And a lot of the controls are on the screen, and lately people have sort of said, well, a nice balance between physical controls and digital is the best way forward. So it kind of feels as though Lotus were quick out of the gates and went for more of it actually being touchscreen. So we have got a volume control, but for the stereo, for example, but it's only on the steering wheel. We haven't got one down here in the center console. So it might be nice to have a few more physical buttons. And other reviewers have said that the screen lagged a little bit. I haven't found that. It's been very quick and intuitive. So some of those reviews were a while ago, so it might have had an update. So I've got no problems in terms of lag or the response time. It's been really quick. We have got nice physical buttons for the air conditioning, and also the reverse, neutral and drive, which is great. We've got some haptic buttons for the lock and unlock as well. We've got a really lovely large charging pad for the phone, which is nice and straightforward and easy to use, and the air ventilation comes out more or less straight into that area, so it keeps your phone nice and cool. I do like the cup holders as well. I think they do feel really nice quality, and it's nice that you can kind of push them up and down when you're not using them. And this center console box is really deep, and you can get loads of stuff in there. It's got some charging, USB-C charging as well. It's got a lovely action to it. Yeah, I'm not sure what the cup holders are going to be like once you get coffee on them, but it might kill your valeter. But at the moment they look really good, but I might be worried about getting coffee on the Alcantara. So, things that I really like then. Well, I like it even more than I thought I would, to be honest. There have been a few naysayers on the internet sort of saying it's not a Lotus, and it's a 2-ton SUV, etc, etc, but I don't know, I think it does feel like a Lotus. There you go, controversially I'm going to say that. I think you can feel that it's been breathed on by those really clever engineers at Hethel, or Lotus generally. I think, yeah, there are a lot of electronics making it feel like that, but it doesn't take away from the experience. It's a very comfortable place to be, but it does feel sporting when you want it to. I love the fact when you put it in sport mode, the bolsters come around you and it feels like it's game on. And then when you do attack a corner, it doesn't roll, it doesn't understeer to any level that I can drive it at that speed, and it doesn't oversteer either. So it feels really, gives you real confidence, feels sporting when you want it to, but it is lovely and comfortable. I know I use that word a lot, but you can imagine using it with your family every day, but then just also having that extra sportiness when you want to. It's very much a car to use every day, and I can imagine doing that, but I can also imagine I would be happy, even though it might look strange from the outside, to be sort of blasting it down a B road, but I do feel as though I would be enjoying myself and I'd still feel as though I'm in a Lotus.
What would you like to do next?
Take it home.
You haven't set the location of your home yet.
Something else that I really like that the fact that they're doing it. I think it needed to be done because with sports cars nowadays, you need something to finance that, and a great way to do that is appeal to the mass market. Everybody, or the mass market, wants SUVs, and there's money to be made. So I don't think it's bad that Lotus want to cash in on that, because if it gives them more development money to make great sports cars, then why not? And also, what are we complaining about? Because Porsche did exactly the same with the Cayenne, and now that's accepted and almost held up as a flagship of sports SUVs. Well, it is held up as a flagship. So yeah, it gives them money to create great sports cars, and it's something that other brands have done and managed to sustain that and managed to keep their image. So of course, people are going to throw back that this is the exact opposite of simplify and add lightness. It's add complexity and weight. But I always think that the way I see Lotus is that Colin Chapman wanted to go racing, and he wanted to make money to go racing because it's expensive to go racing. So he would be happy to sell you what you want to get the money to go racing. And I think there is lineage with this car as well, that if you look at the XL and the Eclat and the Elite, he was looking to move Lotus upmarket into Grand Tourers. So it wasn't all about super lightweight, it was about Grand Tourers, comfort, higher price points in order to keep the company profitable to go racing. So isn't this just doing exactly the same? So isn't this part of Lotus's story anyway? It's only in recent years that they've been super lightweight cars for track day heroes. So why can't we also have that and have this as well? So to sum up then, I really like the Lotus Eletre S. I'm obviously a Lotus owner and a big fan of the brand. My story with Lotus started with the Series 2 Lotus Elise more years ago than I care to remember. And then obviously now with the Elan S2, which I'd always wanted. I know a lot of people have their preconceptions about this car, and I think I brought them along as well from watching YouTube, where obviously people did lean into what we've already talked about it being too heavy and not in line with Lotus. But from my experience, I didn't necessarily agree with that. In some ways, it would have been interesting if they had had the opportunity to create a petrol SUV in the same way that Porsche did. But it doesn't surprise me, from what I've learned today by going to Lotus Classic and looking around the factory, how pioneering they are and how risk-taking and constantly moving on they were in their Formula One story. It's really interesting to kind of draw comparisons with this. They didn't sort of think, oh, we'll create a petrol one. They've gone full guns for being at the front leading edge of what's possible with an electric SUV. And I think that does make it very much a Lotus. Yeah, interesting thought. So that's about it for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and thanks to Lotus and the PR team for the opportunity to get to drive the Eletre. I remember seeing it at Goodwood a year or so ago and being really impressed with it and wanting to drive it. So thanks to them for that opportunity. And there's some other videos, links here and in the description, of some of the other things I got up to while I was at Hethel. Anyway, please like and subscribe if you get the chance, and hit the notification bell as it lets you know when I produce new videos. Plenty more videos to come, so thanks for watching, and bye for now.